What is up, guys? Coach Kobo back in the building for the first time in YouTube as an OP TCG content creator. So I'm super excited to be here, super excited to showcase to you guys today my Trafalgar Law deck profile. A little bit of background about me. I started playing OP TCG back in December, back in 05 when it first released, and I've been super excited to play this TCG since then. Back in the day when I was a kid, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And that was my first TCG, that was my first love. And since I've become an adult and transitioned into adult life, I really wanted to get back into the TCG, found One Piece, and said, this I think is for me. I started playing Sokka in 05, and that was a really hard deck to pilot as being a rookie in a TCG like One Piece. But since then, I have transitioned into Trafalgar Law, and I really think that this is the best deck that I've been able to pilot so far. Been able to get multiple tops and locals with it, and I do want to compete at a higher level. I think the best achievement, quote unquote, that I got has been topping at a case tournament with Trafalgar Law back at the start of OP7. So I just want to showcase my deck profile with that, and I'm hoping to get into more One Piece events pretty soon. Just hope that portals open up, that I'm able to get into online regionals, because it is expensive traveling, but I really do want to get into the competitive TCG scene for One Piece specifically. So today, showing you my Trafalgar deck profile, and we'll go from there, okay? So Law, again, my baby, my bread and butter. And if you guys don't know what this leader does, this is a custom leader from Kaizoku Cards. It is the starter deck ST10 Trafalgar Law, but basically it reads -3 Dawn. You can return a 3,000 power or lower character from your opponent's side of the board to bottom deck them, and then you can play a 4 cost or less card from your hand onto the field. So the reason why this is really busted is because of the fact that there are reducers in this deck like Gordon and Raisemax that basically enable you to play this game. So anything that's a 6k or less for one reducer, basically you get to bottom deck it for free, giving you insane board value and control while also establishing your own board. And if you guys know anything about Sakazuki, that's pretty much what Sakazuki used to do in a more efficient manner. I think Law is still super efficient, but it's aggro, way more aggro than Sokka ever was. So that's why I love this deck, right? I also have my 10 Gear 5 Dawn. I think this is the best Dawn ever. And PRB is not going to convince me that this is going to change. I think this is still the best Dawn ever, but we'll see when PRB releases in the US. Okay, so gonna go over my deck profile right now and just put Law right here to the side. But we are going to start off with 4 Gordon, because again, obviously you play reducers in this deck, and in order to play reducers in this deck, you need to play the bricks. Gordon is a must at 4 of, or you know, Raisemax is a counterpart to him, so I'm just going to show you guys right now. I play 7 reducers, right? I do not play 8, and the reason why I don't play 8 is because I play more forms of reducing in this deck, but I also think that 8 is super bricky. I think once we get to OP08 in September, you might have to play 4 reducers because of the way that deck changes a little bit. With the additions of Black Maria and Charlotte Putty. But for right now, I think 7 reducers is fine. I'm going to show you another reason and another way that I play this deck as to why I play 7 reducers. So I think the 7 reducers right now is justified. And you'll see a little bit more about that in a second, right? The next card that I play, and it's part of your ramp utility toolkit, and again, we don't use this card as much in OP08, but in OP07, Zorojuro is the way to go. The reason why Zorojuro is the way to go is because turn 2, if you're going first, you're forced into an awkward play where either you have to swing 8 with lead or you do something, right? So you can usually swing 5 to lead if you're going first turn 2, and most likely decks will take it, and if not, you get a counter card out of their hand. After that, you are probably taking your first hit 9 times out of 10 times as a Trafalgar Law player, and that means that Zorojuro is going to be live the next time that you swing with it. That means that you get an active Dawn ramp when you swing with Zorojuro, and you can swing with a 4k into a 5k body. Does absolutely nothing, but it gets you the active Dawn, which is super important, right? So let's say you're going into turn 3, you have a Zorojuro on board, you're at 5 Dawn, and you really want to do a Raisemax with a Eustace Kid combo, right? You can swing 4 into a 5k leader or whatever's on the board and get the active Dawn. Again, now you're at 6 Dawn, for nothing, for free, right? You basically ramp the Don for free, and now you can go off on your crazy combos. So Zordro is super good, super insane value. If the player that you're playing against leaves them on the board, you're just automatically ahead, I think. So Zordro, super important, right? Next is going to be the MVP in this deck, and the reason why everyone plays this deck is because of Kid and Killer. If you guys don't know what Kid and Killer does, is a 4-cost 5k rush body. But the really cool part about Kid and Killer is once you get your opponent down to 2 life, he does gain 2,000 when attacking, and that's super important. When attacking is when he gains the 2,000, nowhere else, right? So he's going to be a 4k or 4-cost 7k body when attacking only, but he does stay at 5k after you swing with him, right? The reason why Kid and Killer is super important in this deck is because you can basically aggro down anything. It's a little bit more harder to aggro down 5-cost leaders, but if you play Kid and Killer towards the end game, which is typically when you start playing Kid and Killers, it's really easy to get them at 2 life and them having to take a 4-cost 7k rush. Also, because of the fact that he is a 4-cost, you can summon him off Trafalgar Law leader effect, and for -3 Dawn, you can basically get this for free, which is really good, right? So Kid and Killer is obviously a really good card in this deck. Next, I play 3 Hood Laws, and then I have a regular Law, I guess. I call this Hood Law because I love the way that the treasure rare looks. He also just looks Hood in this version of his altar, right? But I love this card. I used to play him at 2-1 ratios when I used to play Shiraya in this deck. I completely cut Shiraya from this deck because I do not think that Shiraya adds much value outside of the Black Yellow Luffy matchup. And outside of that matchup, Shiraya just feels kind of awkward. I also think that Black Yellow Luffy now has access to Rocket Luffy and is always going to target Shiraya. So basically, you just give them a plus for playing that card, essentially. That's the way I think about him. I think that Trafalgar Law is super good in multiple decks, especially Black Yellow Luffy. If you see at least one Trafalgar Law, I think you're super ahead because you're taking counter out of their hand. Also in the Enel matchup, it's super important to go to, and the Bonnie matchup is super important to go into. So I think Trafalgar Law being a 3-of is really key in this deck. So I run him at 3. Next is going to be another ramp utility toolkit, is going to be Sachi and Penguin. He is an amazing card in this deck and only in this deck. In any other deck, this card is not good. Because the reason why this card is good is because if you have 3 or less Dawn, you're able to ramp back up to Dawn. Because of the way the Trafalgar Law leader works is you're typically going to be able to summon this off your Law leader, right? You can't do this in any other deck, so Sachi and Penguin is only good in this deck. But essentially, it is a ramp +2, so your leader effect costs -1 Dawn or -1 Dawn, right? And if you have a Kid, which we're gonna go over next, actually, let's go over it right now. If you go Kid and Sachi and Penguin, essentially, your leader effect costs nothing, right? Because you are going to -3 Dawn, but Kid gets you 1 active Dawn back, and then Sachi and Penguin, if you're at 3 or less Dawn, is going to get you another 2 Dawn back. So basically what you do is you go Kid on a 5 Dawn turn. Let's say, for example, you -3, and then Sachi and Penguin. What ends up happening is you're at 2 Dawn first, so you trigger Sachi and Penguin first. Let that resolve first, you're back at 4 Dawn, and then Kid gets you back up to 5 Dawn with 1 standing, and now you can swing at lead for 6, right? Typically, the best combo in this deck, I think, in my personal opinion, is going to be a Reducer, right? So any Reducer, let's take a Gordon, for example, and a Kid at 6 Dawn turn, you're going to be able to get something off the board, off your opponent's board for free, basically. Get the Kid out, and then if you have Sachi and Penguin in hand, you are back at 3 Dawn. This gets you to 5, and then it gets you another 1 active for 6. And then next turn, you're at 8 Dawn, and that's insane value for establishing a blocker and a 2K and a 4-cost 5K body. So that is super important, right? So I think Sachi and Penguin is a no-brainer in this deck. In any other deck, I think it's okay. It's a 2K at best, right? But that is basically there. Next, moving forward in the ramp utility toolkit is going to be Bantam Mr. Bon Clay, or Nami Schwan, as I like to call her, right? Bon Clay is super important in this deck right now in OP7. Moving in OP08, I do not think this card is as important because we have more support in the ramp utility department, specifically Charlotte Pudding and Black Maria. I expect Black Maria to eventually be banned, but I hope that Bandai gives us a ban list where we get to play a 4 format here in the US before they ban it over here outright. If not, Clay is going to be seeing a lot more action. But for right now, it is the best ramp tool that we got outside of Kid and Sachi and Penguin combo. So the reason why this is so good is because of the fact that you get 1 active Dawn when you play it. But the problem with this is if you ever see a Law red purple mirror, this gets to get bottom deck for free off Law ability. So it is kind of feels bad in that moment. I typically don't play my Clays in the Law mirror unless I really need to get the active Dawn. So that's the only caveat with this card. But if we do get Black Maria, I don't think you're going to be seeing this card in OP08. So moving on. Again, last part of the ramp utility package, I believe, is going to be 3 Ein. Again, not a great card, but it is unconditional. I don't like this card at all, really, because it has no counter. But again, in the Law mirror, it's super important because it is a 5k body. So in order for Law to bottom deck this, they do need to commit at least 1 reducer to it. And again, knowing that your Law players only play a maximum of 8 reducers, if not more, with the Raise Maxes and the Gordons, you can basically take out their reducers by playing Ein, or they're going to have to attack into it, right? So like Ein is pretty good in that sense. I used to play Beppo back in 06, and I think Beppo is super good, but when you see the Law mirror, which you do see a lot of nowadays, Beppo just feels bad because you're required to have less Dawn than your opponent in order to resolve Beppo. So Ein is in this spot for now. I cannot wait to get her out of my deck, honestly. The reason why I play so much ramp is because I think this is the MVP, and probably I call this my strategy B in my deck is going to be 3 Polkas D Ace. And the reason why I included Donut Boy into this build is because I think Donut Boy adds so much value into Trafalgar Law. It is a top end card, right? Most of the time what you see counter with Trafalgar Law, like if you see Great Dofi, right? They see 5 costs and less all around your deck, and they don't expect the 7 cost Ace. I also used to play Ace at 2, and then I saw a list that won at PPG, played 3 Ace, and I was so interested by it that I was convinced I had to run 3 Ace, ran it at locals, and ever since then, bro, like this deck just runs so smooth. Because if, let's say you go to 7 Dawn turn, so typically the way you like to set this up is you want to go Ace at 3 Dawn turn, right? So let's say you're going second. On your second turn, right, you're either going to play one of your rampers, either Sachi, or not Sachi Penguin, either Ein or Bon Clay. At your 4 Dawn turn, you're going to ramp 1, right? And then at your 3rd turn, you're at 7 Dawn, you can play Ace, right? And the reason why Ace is so good at your 3rd turn is because of the fact that by the time your opponent is at turn 3, they want to establish multiple bodies on their board, right? And what Ace does, if you don't know, is on play, it gives 2 of your opponent's characters minus 3k. So what that essentially means is whatever they've tapped is going to be minus 3k, which is an easy swing over, and whatever is not tapped, whatever they establish that turn, is going to be minus 3. So most times if you're playing against a Lucci or a Black Yellow Luffy, they're going to have 2 characters on their board by turn 3, and you get essentially run them over with Ace, establishing a 7 cost 7k body, which is super sticky in this meta, super hard to get rid of. And on top of the fact, you are reducing that turn, so you can use leader effect to go into an Ein, right? If you go into an Ein or a Bon Clay after Ace, you can essentially get back to 5 Dawn and then set up Ace again, which is super, super broken. Or you can go into your other pieces, right? So sometimes I like to go from Ace to Law, right? The reason why I like to go from Ace to Law is because then I can go minus 1 Dawn, and then I'm back at 3 Dawn for the following turn, or 3 Dawn for that turn, 5 Dawn into the following turn, where again I can go into Kid, I can go to Sachi and Penguin, Sachi Penguin's live, and just get cards out of their hand and establish a blocker. Or if you really want to, is you can go into anything else that doesn't ramp you anything, like let's say Reiju, which we haven't talked about yet, right? And Then you can Reiju, get some cards back in hand, and then next turn, what you're set up for your turn again, right? Because you're at 4 Dawn, you're gonna go into 6 Dawn the following turn, is a Kid and a Reducer. And again, if you have Sachin Penguin, ultimate combo in this deck, right? So I think that's super efficient and super good for 7 Dawn. So I love Ace in this deck. I've been playing 3 of him, and I've been winning a lot with him. So I think Ace is just really good. Next, moving forward, we're going to talk about our draw power, and we do play the 3 Queen. I used to play it at 2. I bumped it up to 3 because, again, this deck, if you've noticed, does not have any searchers like most of the meta decks in the game do right now. We're very reliant on draw power, so Queen is a necessity here. It is also a -1, so if you establish a Kid blocker with Queen, you basically get to draw 2, trash 1 for free. And the reason why I like this along with Ace is because, let's say for example you have 3 aces in hand for whatever reason, or an ace and an nine. These are basically called brick cards because they do not have counter. So in a pinch, you can drop one of your bricks in order to get some 2Ks or 1Ks into your hand. So I really like Queen in this build because of that. It gets you to filter out through your bricks and just allows you to cycle your deck a lot more, right? Next, another MVP in this deck, and probably the reason why Law is even good, is Reiju. Because without Reiju, we do not have any search power. And again, I think this deck would be pretty much dead without Reiju. Reiju is super important here. And again, I love going Ace into Reiju because most of the time when I'm at 7 and then go back up to 4, my opponent should be at 5 or 6 Dawn. So they're always going to I'm always going to resolve Reiju unless I'm playing the mirror. And most times, even if I do play the mirror, they're probably at 4 to 5 Dawn because they want to resolve a Sachin Penguin to get value and make sure that their Dawn is up. So most of the time I am resolving Reiju after Ace, and it's really good. And then I get to draw 2 and refill my hand back up to like 5 or 6, if not maybe 7 cards sometimes. So Reiju is super important in this deck. Next, I do play, and don't hate me for this, but I do play 4 Sanji. And the reason why I say don't hate me for this is because I have 3 ults and 1 regular. I am waiting for my last ult. My friend went to Gen Con this weekend, so hopefully he'll be able to pick up my last ult for me. And then we'll be good to go. But the reason I like 4 Sanji, and again, I stopped playing Shuraya in this deck, is because at worst, this is a 2K counter in hand. At best, it's a 3 cost 6K blocker that you can establish pretty much any time in the game. As long as you're not playing against the mirror or you're playing any like weird Dawn reducing deck like Reiju. Reiju basically is gate capped by Law, so I really don't think you're ever going to see Reiju and have problems with it. But if not, Sanji's pretty much always live as a 3 cost 6K body. That's a blocker, right? So Sanji is super important. And it's also bringing up our 2K counter ratio up to 10 right now that we're playing. So I play Sanji, and I also play 2 Otamas. The reason why I play Otama is because, again, 1, it's a reducer, so if you ever see any 5K bodies on your opponent's board, you can play Otama down for 1 and reduce, and then Law effect is live, and it is also 2K. I used to run 11 2K counters, but instead I am running a 1-of, which again, I don't like running 1-ofs, but right now I am playing the 1 Miss All Sunday because at worst it is a brick in hand that you can recycle. You can cycle through. At best, it is a 5 Dawn play, which gets you a rested Dawn and lets you draw 2 or lets you draw 1. Also, if you see this in trigger, most times, 9 times out of 10 times, I'm resolving the trigger because again, it's basically a -1 Dawn because you get the Dawn back, and it's a 5K 5 cost body, which is harder for Lucci to remove, which is harder for removal decks in general to deal with. So I really like Miss All Sunday at 1. If I had to, I would cut Miss All Sunday for my 3rd Otama to make it 11 2Ks. And I have played with 11 2Ks before, but Miss All Sunday at 1 doesn't feel too bad. So that's basically my deck list. That is my deck profile. If you guys have any comments or questions about my Trafalgar Law leader and the way that I play this deck, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, it has been a pleasure doing this first deck profile for you guys. I plan to do a lot more, probably do some games on the sim and test. Might start streaming on Twitch. So feel free to give me a follow. Feel free to start building this community. And this is Coach Kobo signing out. I'll see you on the next one, guys.